Hi everyone, this is Leatherass for StoxPoker.com. Today I have two tables of 50-cent $1 no limit, 6 max tables. So we're going to kind of start off and just sort of get a feel for the table and kind of decide more or less what the best plan of attack is to try to get these guys money. So with the King Jack suited, we have an under the gun raiser, and we have a guy that float. I think King Jack suited is close, but I think it's good enough to put in a call. We're out of position, which makes it not as much fun, but I think given that it's suited, I do like a call here. And I'm going to start just by checking it and see what develops here. I mean, top pair is a pretty good hand, but at the same time, it's not great. So this guy actually leading for $12 really made my life easy, because now it's just an easy call and just kind of hope for the best. But had he checked and say Davo 124 would have bet, it would have been a really tricky spot, especially if somebody else would have called, or just, I mean, it could have gotten pretty nasty, and we could have definitely gotten a pretty hairy spot. But I kind of wish he had, just to kind of, I'm not sure exactly how I would have played it. But I feel like starting off by checking and sort of seeing what develops is best. I don't really think leading out is very good there, because, if I lead out and he bets, or he raises me, and, or he calls and then he raises, I'm just going to be in a nasty spot. So, I can also get my information for free if, like, he were to lead out all in, and then Davo would have raised, or if Davo would have bet and the other guy would have raised. I can just, there's a lot I can learn about the hands without investing any money. So, if it gets checked through, that's no fun, because it's a pretty vulnerable board. But at the same time, it's not like I flopped such a great hand that was worth investing a lot to protect. So with the King 4 suited here, we have a limper. So if you guys watch my videos, you know what that means. We're going to raise it up. And with the Deuce 10 offsuit, we're going to do the same. And we kind of get a feel for how these guys react for this. I don't expect them to start fighting back right away. If they did, I would be pretty surprised. And if they call, that kind of tells me something about their hand as well. So, or tells me something about the kind of player they are. Because good players don't limp call in 6 max. So this guy, I believe, posted sales ski, and then he puts in a min raise. This is something I'd be just chomping at the bit to jump all over, but with a $20 stack, I'm not going to get involved here. 9-10 offsuit, again, I'd like to punish the limper, but with only $24, I don't feel that I have enough to really threaten him with. The people I want to sort of punish are, I'd like him to have at least a mid stack. I'd like to preferably have some kind of hand that has a chance of flopping something. Like, I prefer not to, like, raise up deuce 8 offsuit, but there are certain types of players that are passive enough to where your range can be any two. But because just the theory behind punishing the limpers is basically that if a guy limps, unless he's going for the rare limpery raise with aces, which hardly ever happens in 6 max, he likely just has some kind of hand that's not going to hit the flop all that often. He just wants to invest a buck, or whatever the blind structure is. He just wants to invest a small amount. I'm going to raise the 10-7 suited here. He just wants to invest a small amount and try to flop something and get lucky. And since he's not going to flop something all that great very often, we want to raise him, and then if we steal, that's great. I'm just going to lead for about 3/4 pot here. If we steal, that's great. If we don't, he's going to check, and then we're going to bet, because, the check to the raiser mentality. And he's going to fold almost all the time, because he's just not going to hit the flop that often. So 10-7 suit, I have middle pair. I have a flush draw, backdoor straight. He raised me up. This is an easy, easy shove here. Okay, so up against a set there, there's really, it's just kind of one of those setup flops, I guess you'd call it. Guy flops a set, guy flops a pair and a flush draw, all the money's going in, so nothing we can feel bad about there. One thing people ask me is if, a lot of times in the lower limits, I really think a good style to play is to just simply sort of play, just some premium hands around the button. And by premium, I don't necessarily mean, aces and kings, but, ace, king, ace, queen, ace, jack, like king, queen suited, pocket pair, stuff like that. And you can just kind of play those hands, and against the 50-cent dollar type opponents, 1, 2, 50, the quarter 50-cent games, that sort of limit, and obviously lower. You can just play premium hands and really push them for value, and just sort of play like a nit, play like a rock, and just kind of, more or less just wait for good hands post-flop. Pre-flop, and then also don't get, your money involved post-flop unless you flop a good hand. And, you can make money with that kind of style up, up at some mid-stakes games and sometimes even beyond. But at the same time, I'll advocate that sort of style. Ace-8 off, I'm just going to fold here, even getting such a good price. Now, I advocate that kind of style because I like to have decisions be easy for me. I don't play that style in my games because I can't get away with it at higher stakes, just sitting around waiting for hands. Guys will catch on to that, but at these limits, they won't. And I was pretty darn successful at, all the way up to like 1, 2, and 2, 4, no limit. Just kind of waiting around for hands and pushing them for value when I get them. And I think as your post-flop game improves, you can start to expand the starting range of hands that you play. But, while it's in the process of getting there, why not just play good hands and push them for value and make some money against these type of opponents? So I will advocate this kind of things in the forums and such, and then at the same time, I'm pushing flush draws for my whole stack. In the same video where I'm telling you to play, premium hands to keep your decisions easy. And people will ask me, what's going on here? This seems so contradictory. You're trying to like sort of nut pedal and play good hands and all this stuff and make decisions easy, but at the same time you're pushing flush draws and, straight draws and stuff like that. And I think they have very valid points, but the one thing that I can't stress enough is that, excuse me one second. One thing I can't stress enough is that if you want to keep your decisions easy, why not just push flush draws? Why not just push straight draws? I think it's more difficult to try to play a pot. I'm going to fold the queen 9 suit here. I think it's more difficult to play a pot like sort of maybe out of position or even in position. You're facing some heat and you have like a flush draw or a straight draw. Why not just stick all the money in? I mean, how bad could it go in if you have a flush draw or you have a straight draw? I mean, you're going to have like 35 to 50, depending if you have overcards. You might even be a favorite, and you have the fold equity, for, whatever's in the pot, the chance that you'll just pick up the pot by them folding. That's generally if, a raise and a goes in pre-flop and then you're betting on the flop, there's a decent amount of money in the pot to be won. So I say if you get some draws, just shove it all in. There's no shame in that. Obviously, you don't want it to be a ridiculous overbet. You don't want to just shove a flush draw on like a $3 pot for $100. But if you're going to be involved in a pot with somebody in like a raised pot, or especially a raised and re-raised pot, and you flop a draw, just get it in. And that, to me, makes your decisions easy. Because once you get that flush draw, you just stick your money in. It's almost never going to go in bad. And you don't even have to think about it. So when you have the fold equity, it could really never be a losing play. So, I mean, obviously there may be an exception here or there where it would make more sense to sort of not play your flush draw that way, but that's how at the same time I can advocate both playing a tight style and at the same time being somewhat viewed as somewhat loose by shoving flush draws and straight draws and all that stuff. So that's one thing I just sort of wanted to address that I've noticed in the forums and when I make certain videos. So anyway, at this point, I maybe have folded a few hands during the video, or that I would normally play, like maybe that Queen 9 suited. But I really wanted to get to that point that I wanted to make, and hopefully I was able to sort of articulate it. But I'm not sure how good of a job I did. But I can always explain it more in the forums if it doesn't make sense to you guys. So with jacks, he had less than a full stack there, easy all-in situation. Should he come back over the top of me? With the A7, I'm just going to go ahead and bet. And with the King 3 suited, I'm going to actually try to punish the limper here. He's got just enough money. With the ace here, this is close. I could bet. I could just check call. I think check calling's best. And maybe not calling. Maybe the flush got there. He overpotted it. Not a whole lot of draws that didn't get there, except maybe like Jack 9. I'm going to go ahead and just fold here. And the ace 5 suited will pot it up again. I thought about maybe putting out a tiny little value bet, but I didn't think he was going to call 3 streets without an ace, and my kicker he certainly wasn't going to call with a worse ace, so I didn't really see a whole lot of value in betting. I'd rather check call and try to pick up maybe a bluff, misdraw, and then also get the opportunity to just check fold if he, is looking like he maybe made the flush draw there, which to me that bet says that I either got there with my flush or I had Jack 9, and I really do think it's more likely he had a flush, so I feel pretty good about that fold. With the ace 5 suited here, he donks into me. This looks to me, I raced pre-flop and he called. This looks to me a lot like a hand like pocket 7s or something like that. Maybe a weak 10 trying to find out where he's at. I doubt it's an 8 for 3/8, but if it is a small pair, we'll hope it's not pocket 4s, because that would be pretty sick now, wouldn't it? But I'm not going to be scared of the paired board and fold at any point in this hand. I'm just going to try to get value for it. So I'm going to bet, well, let's see. If he does have a weakish sort of hand, we'd like to string him along, because if he has an 8 or a smaller flush, probably going to check raise me anyway. So I can just make it small and try to get value out of the weak part of his range, figuring he'll just check raise me anyway if he does have 3/8 or a flush draw. So he folded. So yeah, I think what I was saying was right. I doubt he just folded a 10 there. I mean, maybe he did, but I think more like a middle pair or something like that is more in his range, and maybe he put in a call, putting me on some kind of flush draw or something on the flop, and then was able to figure he couldn't beat much of anything after the flush got there on the turn. I mean, that's a reasonably likely scenario. I mean, maybe I'm giving him too much credit. I don't know, but I think that's probably what he had. One thing I also want to focus on is really trying to think before you make certain actions. I'm really starting to spend a lot of time on decisions and just really grind on them. I mean, I instinctually almost bet $30 there on the turn, And the reality was is that bet didn't make any sense because, like I said, I was going to get check raised anyway if he had the eights or the smaller flush, or if nothing else, I was going to be building enough pot with a $23 bet to get it all in on the river against the top part of his range. So I might as well make a smaller bet to try to get value out of the bottom part of his range. So some people, it's easy to just kind of get a good hand and just want to bet it up or slow play it or whatever. But the fact is, you really got to figure out what's optimal against his range. And once he donks the flop and calls my raise, we have to assign him a range of hands. And I think that I'm just going to open shove this queen 10 suited. He has less than the minimum buy-in. And if I bet and he raised me, it'd just be kind of a weird spot. So I just put it all in. But one thing you got to always try to do is think about every decision. And try to come up with the best possible decision. When he has, when the villain in the hand does something or has, takes a certain line, you got to really think what that means. And you know what? It took me literally millions of hands to really get that concept and really sort of go into that upper level thinking of what your opponent has. We know what we have. It's on the screen. But what does our opponent likely have? And I would really recommend sort of, every decision you go through, think about what your opponent just did and sort of try to figure out what hands do you think he might do that with. And this skill will improve, as you go along. I feel like it gets better. I get better at that skill all the time, but you have to start somewhere, and it took me a long time just to even know where to start because I was just thinking about my cards for forever and just kind of, if I had a really good hand, betting it up and hoping he had something that was like second best so it could pay me off. And that's just less than optimal in terms of the way of thinking. So I feel at this point, usually I play, sort of lag at times and tag and sort of go back and forth. But I really feel like we've come across some interesting spots in terms of concepts that I'd like to get across. And so maybe I'm playing a little tighter than I would because I want to talk about things more than play the actual hands. But I feel like, so far maybe we're just kind of playing the hands within a bubble. I'd like to maybe try to get more of a feel for the table and what's going on. But at the same time, I think if some of these concepts keep coming up and ideas pop in my head, I think it's probably good to sort of jump on that and sort of ride that because boy, this is a tricky spot. With the fours, I'm going to start by calling with the fives. You could re-raise too. With the fours, I think I can just fold here. The only other really option is to raise. I can't just call because he's just going to bet the flop and I'm going to fold practically everything. And he's going to have overcards a lot of the time. With the fives, that flop is going to hit a lot of things. Not very attractive flop for fives, so I'm just going to fold there. Alright, so we haven't been overly active, so let's go ahead and make it about $9. I guess maybe we can make it 8. 8 or 9 is fine. General pre-flop raise would be about 4, but I'd add about $1 for everybody that is in the pot. So I guess I should have made it 8, but 8 or 9 is fine. I think that's also a good guideline for if you have a hand you want to raise and say you would normally make it 4 in a 50-cent dollar game, which 3 or 4 is fine. But let's say you make it 4. If there are 2 limpers in there, I would always make it 6, because it just kind of cuts down on their odds. You don't want them to be able to limp call with all kinds of junk, and then um, you know, it just doesn't punish them as much either. You know, let's if they're going to make a mistake to limp and then call, let's make it a big mistake for them, or at least a bigger mistake. Make it, 6 rather than 1 or 4 or 9 rather than 7. So decent flop in the sense that he probably doesn't have an ace. He probably has like a mid-suited connector or pocket pair or something. So I should be able to represent an ace pretty well here. And so I'm going to bet about 75-80% of the pot. And he quickly calls, so maybe he does have a hand like, ace 5 or something like that. I'm not confident enough that this guy can fold. A lot of times I would just go ahead and fire again here. This is a limp re-raise, but I'm just going to have to call it. There's too much money in the pot now. So it looks like my ace queen high is good, which that's lucky. Wow, so he bets 10. I really can't fold now. This is just not a scenario you get into often. I can't understand why he'd bet 10. But I can improve to 2 pair. He could also be on a draw and give up on the river, figuring that he can't bluff me. So I'm going to have to call here, and I'm just going to have to check the river and hope he has some kind of busted draw, but I can't call anything. Alright, so he just had the jack. If I knew more about the opponent, I could have maybe done something a little differently there, but I just don't know what all that stuff means. So with the ace king, we're going to go ahead and make it 6 here. Alright, so he bets 1. I think what I'm going to go ahead and do is just make it about 16. I have an overcard, 2 overcards, and a straight draw. And this guy with the 92 has kind of told me he doesn't have much by just calling here. I mean, I guess maybe there's some elaborate trap going on, but I doubt it. So I'm just going to bet, hope to get 2 folds, but if not, I should be in pretty good shape against bells. So with the 3s, I'll just bet, well, maybe it was an elaborate trap here by him. So we're going to have to fold now. And with the 3s, we'll just put our money in. He could have a lot of stuff there. So, he didn't have me in the best of shape there. Wow. That's really shocking that Seth. He has reasonable numbers of 17-17. I cannot imagine what was going through his head there. With 10 high, with presumably with definitely no fold equity on bells, and I almost would have to think that's a misclick of some kind. I can't even imagine anybody with these sort of numbers like 17-17 could ever make a play that poor. But I can't remember. He didn't have a flush draw, I don't believe. Unless I'm missing something here. 3 diamonds, spade, diamond. No, he had no draw. So ace jack here, I'm going to make a little raise right here and sort of try to get a little money if he just has like an 8 and, make him pay for his draw a little bit. I don't want to just let him dictate what it is. And then there's really no value in raising here, so I'm just going to call it the ace jack. So he did have an ace 8, so the turn raise did get a little more money in there. I wasn't worried about someone this passive re-raising me on a draw or anything silly. So a little bit unfortunate because I would have chopped the pot against bells if Seth wouldn't have re-raised like that. He typed LOL in the chat. I mean, it wouldn't surprise me normally because people make bad plays, obviously, at at all the limits really. But to have a guy with these kind of numbers make an illogical play was pretty shocking to me. But you know, might have been a misclick or something. Getting back to sort of assigning people ranges, um, one thing that's really helped me assign people better ranges is not so much my poker skill. It's I started working with a sports psychologist, and he's done a great job helping me maintain composure under pressure, basically. I can't say that I've been the best at that uh, throughout both my golf career and my poker career, truthfully. But pretty good with golf. I seem to have been a little worse at it with poker, and I think the reason why is because when I hit a bad shot playing golf, I only have myself to blame. But when I hit a bad shot, or excuse me, when something wrong happens at poker, it's often just bad luck, or truthfully luck that is just going to happen to everybody, but it just feels like bad luck at the time. So I have a little bit more of a difficult time controlling that. But I was 3-4 here. I'm going to let it pass and talk more about this. But one thing that's helped me assign people better ranges and make better decisions post-flop is simply breathing. You get nervous sometimes. A guy raises you, a couple $100, and it's like, oh boy, it's like, you play these big pots, and it's easy to get nervous. Even if it's not the money that bothers you, it could be just simply, just the anxiety of wanting to win or whatever it is. And it's just really important to breathe when you get in these situations. All the sites have a timer button. Just click the timer button, take some deep breaths, and just really try to make the best decision you know to play. And a lot of people, when they're trying to learn, play too many tables too, I've noticed. I know I was one of them. If you played too many tables, you're not going to be able to make great decisions. And if you're trying to learn in this game, that's just not a good way to go, because you're not going to be able to take the time to make the good decisions if you have 6 screens beeping at you at once. You know what I mean? So, definitely reducing the tables is a good way to improve your poker game. But just take your time, breathe, think about what he could have, and just try to make the best decision possible. I even have a notepad on my one of my monitors that basically more or less just reminds me to breathe and just reminds me to go through the mental steps. And I know a few blogs ago I wrote out what those mental steps were, but it's important to do that in order to play your best poker. In fact, here's my notepad right here. I'll drag it right down on the screen. This is my coach, Jared. Mental checklist. Whoops, it disappeared. What does his line mean? So when he does something, what do I think it means more than likely? What is the best line to take versus his range is number 2. And 3, consider all of your options before deciding and make sure to take lots of deep breaths. So using that sort of mental checklist has really helped me play better for me poker. So I really, I think you can use that same list, and it would be very beneficial to just sort of make decisions using that. So Seth on the bottom right screen, I've seen, I was in the middle of trying to articulate a few points there, and he seems to be playing really wild. he has solid numbers, and apparently I have 154 hands from somewhere. Let's see if we can pull the pop up. So it looks like it is from a lower limit, because he's only down $211, and he's down a lot of big bets per 100. So it's not like he was at one of my big games. But I'm just trying to figure this guy out right now because we want to know the best line to take him. Looks like we should try to trap him if we get a hand. Jack 7, we haven't done much here. I'm going to just raise it up on the button. It's kind of a loose raise, but we've been playing pretty tight. I think Seth could easily be, maybe drunk or something. Maybe he's on tilt, big time. It could be anything, but I do know he's definitely not playing good poker, good solid poker. So, which again wouldn't surprise me if he was a 60 VPIP or something, but he's a 17, pretty solid numbers. Fold to big blind to steal 82, 41 fold to flop bet. Seems to be a pretty reasonable player, but for some reason he's making plays that are completely illogical, like that one right there. So, it's something we need to keep in mind here. Well, he left. That's unfortunate. I felt like he was primed for the pick-in. All I needed to do was make a top pair, and I was all in against him. I would go so far as to say I would make it almost mandatory for yourself, especially if you happen to play a higher limit, to make a checklist. With the 9-5 off, I'll let it go. That checklist for me has just been huge, and it's really helped me make better quality decisions under pressure. So, if you happen to jump up, if your normal game's 25, 50 cent, and all of a sudden you want to, things are going well, or you feel your game's improved and you want to take a shot at a limit like 50-cent dollar or 1-2 or something like that. I really think, because you're going to be more likely to put in a difficult position at some point in a hand at a bigger limit, and you're also more likely to see like a bigger dollar number and sort of freak yourself out. So I really think putting something like a mental checklist there to make sure that you make your best decision under pressure is really like almost mandatory. I would definitely advocate that. So fours, this is a great situation. Oh wow, we hit a great flop here. So let's just hope somebody has a king. I don't think I'm going to bet it right out because all the money's going to go in if somebody has a king anyway. Pot's so big already. Again, no problems getting the money in. So what I'd like to do is slow play this one a little bit, and hopefully like some kind of draw hits on the turn. I can't slow play it anymore just because I've got to try to get some value. And also if I slow play it all the way to the river, I may not even get all the money in from a king. So we're gonna have to bet it now and just hope somebody wakes up with something. Truthfully, it doesn't look like anybody has a king, which is unfortunate, but that's just the way it goes. But if something like an ace hits on the turn, or like a jack of clubs there that puts like a club flush draw, and like a queen of clubs that puts like the club flush draw, and then like jack 10 has a straight draw and stuff like that. Like all those hands that are drawing dead, I'd like to slow play that one a little bit and try to give those hands an opportunity to maybe make a second best hand or something. Against anybody who doesn't have a king, I'm probably at least a 99% favorite there. So I take that back. If they have a middle pocket pair, then I'm only like a 90% favorite. But either way, it's worth slow playing. King queen suited, raise on the button. I do think he has just enough chips to still fold, maybe And king queen suited is a pretty good hand versus a button steal, so I'm just going to go ahead and put the money in. And hopefully we can win the pot. Not looking good though. Nope. Got a chop, that's fine. So 3-6 off, under the gun limper. We'll just pop him up here. Maybe we might get a little frisky in the last few minutes of the video here. So we flop a gut shot. I think that's going to be worth continuation betting because this type of flop doesn't hit a whole lot of hands. Now it's, gosh, a lot of I would normally just raise this, but gosh, I was in this same situation, wasn't I, a little bit ago? I'm not sure I'm confident bells will fold anything. Maybe I'll just try to either hit the 4 or maybe try to, you know, an ace will hit on the turn, I can bluff it or something like that. So I do make a pair. In the ace-7 suit, it's just sort of a min raise, I think. So I'm going to have to call here and just sort of play my position. So I certainly can't fold with a pair now. Question is, should I raise? Oh, with the ace-7 suit, I'm going to call one time. This I can easily represent something on the turn and bluff him. Plus, I might have the best hand. So I'm just going to call it the 3s here. You know, he may have a hand like ace deuce or something that I still beat. So I'm going to go ahead and bet. This is close because I actually do have showdown value. I actually don't think I'm going to bet. And it's probably a good thing I didn't there. And with the 3s, I'm just going to call out of curiosity. The pot's big enough. And now I'm going to go for a tiny bit of value with 3 7s. He definitely doesn't have a straight, so just going to go for a little bit of value. And maybe he'll look me up with a hand like pocket jacks or something like that. Okay, so he doesn't. Had I had a hand like king queen there, I would have also just called the flop, because once you know, the likelihood the board's going to get ugly for him on either the turn or river is pretty darn likely that either the flush or the straight will come in, and I can represent one of those hands. So I don't think he's going to go broke with the flush making or the straight getting there. So I chose to call, and I was just going to bet a scary turn card if he checked me. That was sort of my plan for the hand. So Jack 10 suited, I'll just open. So quickly called. So I don't put him, you know, he when he sort of snap calls like that, I don't put him on like a big hand or anything. So I wish he had more chips, because this is the kind of board where I would triple barrel with ace king, but I'm not going to have enough room to triple barrel because he only has 68. But and he quickly called. You know, I do put him on kind of like a, you know, I was going to say like a weak ace suited connector, like a pocket pair, like on the flop, or pre-flop. Now that he's called, I think the weak ace is pretty likely. I'm just going to check, and I'm not going to try to push him off the hand. He just doesn't have enough chips. But you can, unless the guy was a tremendously huge calling station, that's a board I'm definitely going to just fire 3 barrels at and just let him, you know, have fun trying to call there with ace-5 on all 3 streets with ace-king X on board when I raise pre-flop and fire 3 times. You know, I just don't think he can. So I generally, like I said, will triple barrel a board like that. You know, if the board gets really ugly and a lot of the hands he could have sort of get filled in, then I might have to reconsider. But if the board stays dry like that and I'm hammering from out of position, I just don't think he's going to call down too often. You don't get in those kind of spots too much at the higher stakes because guys almost never call. They fold or raise, so you don't get the opportunity to do that. But I definitely recommend looking for spots to push people off hands. But you got to make sure that if you're going to do that, the guy has enough chips to bluff you, or to bluff, and you also want to make sure he's not a guy that's just going to call down with his ace-5. You know, you want to have those sort of medium guys that aren't super good enough to know that you're what you're up to, but they're good enough to not go broke with like pair ace as a 5 kicker. So you know, those are the kind of guys you want to try to pull that stuff with. With 4-6, actually with ace-9, we'll start with the hand on the right. I'm going to go ahead and just raise up the limper here. And with the 4-6, I'm going to, this is close. I think I'll just give it to him. Against a calling station type, I don't think trying to play 6 high out of position is probably going to be profitable. So, but the 5-7, I'm going to raise, and I'm actually going to 4-bet this particular player if he raises again. And he leads into me for over pot. I just don't really see what that could mean. And so now I'm going to make a tricky sort of re-raise here. I think I'm just going to fold the ace-9. Okay, so 45 with the 5-7 suited. I thought about shoving there, but I'd probably prefer to have like an ace-queen or something like that. Something where if he's not going to call me with like ace-jack, I just don't think he's going to have a hand there that often. So, and I got called here. I don't think I have any choice but to just go ahead and shove it all in. I do have a pair, and he snap called, so that's not good. Okay, so my sort of logic is he pretty much had to have, well, he had to have a good hand pre-flop in order to even call my bet. And with these kind of numbers, he's squeezing with all sorts of junk in that spot. And he's shown to me that he's capable of, raising in all kinds of places. Now, once he calls like that, I'm putting him on, like, this kind of guy's loose, so he might even call, like, he might call, like, ace-queen, tens through queens, that kind of flop. I just had to stick it in there. I'm pretty much, unless he decided to slow play aces or has ace-king, he can't call. He can't call a 4-bet pre-flop and a shove on the flop with anything but ace-king or aces there. So I just kind of rolled the dice. I didn't have it. If I hadn't flopped a pair, I might have reconsidered, just because ace-king is a decent part of his range. And so, and who knows, he might look me up with queens. I don't know. Probably not. But once I made the pair there, and if I remember right, I did have a backdoor flush. I'm not positive. I'm going to look at the hand history again. Yeah, I did have a backdoor flush. So, and I'm going to raise 8-7 here. So I'm not quite sure what kind of equity, but it had to be at least somewhat decent there that I had. My guess would be with a pair and a flush draw, even if I knew he was going to call with ace-king, I don't know, I would probably have 25% or something like that. So, that's reasonable to try to bluff a guy with 25% equity when called. So we're just going to follow up on the 8-7 here with a bet. And so now Davo's still calling, but I can't defend with Jack-3. If I had like Jack-10 suited or something, I certainly would. Boy, I'm tempted to run a bluff here, but there are so many draws with the that this guy just won't fold on. He hasn't been donking strong pretty much ever. Reasonably strong sometimes, but I'm just going to call. I do still have the gut shot. And now that the board paired, I was looking for like hopefully some kind of card I could bluff. But that card was not good because he's going to call me with any sort of pair. Maybe if he checks, I might do something, but if he puts out his little $2 bet, as tempting as it would be. Okay, so my guess is he actually does have something here. Yeah, 3 tens. But yeah, that was a pretty mandatory shove. I mean, 25% equity is pretty darn decent. Whoops, I apologize for that. I was just trying to get my software pulled up so I could actually run the math on that hand. So I was getting a pretty good price. I think he only needed to fold like I don't know, 3 or 4 out of 10 times there for my shove to be profitable with any two. And then when you factor in me having 25% equity, I'm in pretty good shape. So it'd be nice if this guy didn't make a hand every time. I'm gonna go ahead and just rep it the whole way. So I'm gonna pop him up to 8. Oh, and he re-raises. Oh my god, this guy has something every time it seems like. Um, I am just gonna actually call here. I have the backdoor flush. I can pick up a lot of draws on the turn. He doesn't necessarily have to have a big hand here, but I think he might have a little something. So hopefully this doesn't get ugly for me now that I've made top pair. Okay, so I'm just gonna call. He's made it pretty small. And obviously for a buck I'm gonna call. Okay, so he did have a set. I can't figure this guy out. I mean, he just throws a buck out there. He just throws like whatever he feels out there. There's no sort of rhyme or reason to it. But, what am I going to do there? Okay, so not 18%, I had 8, or not 25%, I had 18% on that flop. He did have actually the bigger flush draw, so, or the bigger backdoor flush. I would have had 23% had he not had the bigger backdoor flush draw. So my initial reaction of being right around 25%, I guess, was right. If he had ace king, it's just that club flush draw dropped me by like 5%. So yeah, I mean, bluffing like that, it was a pretty good spot with 25% equity. If called, it was definitely plus EV for me to shove that flop. So that makes me feel a little better. I won some Skolansky bucks. And we might be able to add even a lot more hands to his range rather than tens through queens and aces, or tens through aces and ace king there. He could, gosh, I mean, who knows? I mean, he might, maybe king queen's in his range too. Maybe ace jack. I don't know. I mean, he's a 40 VPIP. I don't think it's maybe fair to put him on such a narrow range like that. So, not gonna feel bad about that one. We were a little deep, so that part was a little frustrating, but I guess we were like 150 blinds deep. But I made him have aces or ace king basically, or kings. So anytime you get someone in a situation where they have to have a super narrow range of hands, you're never in too bad of a spot there. So this guy's super tight and he limps under the gun. I just can't imagine what he would fold there. So I think we'll go, I'll take it off the auto post on the table on the right, and then I'll just post and then take it off the auto post on the left. We got in some funky little spots. It's kind of interesting, and I really hope that I was able to sort of get across those points I was trying to make. I'm not always, admittedly the best at articulating a lot of my thoughts, especially with the while trying to play tables. But hopefully that worked out. And if you have any questions on that, please feel free to ask in the forums. And when I have time where I don't have anything else to do, and I can just write down my thoughts in the forums. I'll certainly articulate it much better, would be my guess. So, you know, I definitely look forward to hearing from you guys there. So ace queen suited, easy open, and I think I'll probably 4-bet and play for stacks if Davo 3-bets me here. So he left me alone that time, and steal the blinds. I was hoping we wouldn't do that. Only getting some interesting spots for you guys. With the 5-7 suited, the reason I decided to do that is one, you know, to 4-bet there is for one, I just like to keep people on their toes. I don't want them to know like a 4-bet means like aces and kings every time there. You know, in this particular spot, this guy is not a guy I'm going to be regularly playing in, so it's less important to do something like that. But more than likely, he's just sort of squeezing with a bunch of junk there. I mean, the one guy was calling me all the time. I'm not sure if it was this guy that's still in here right now or another guy. And Davo was 3-betting me like it was his job. So it just seemed like a squeeze. I mean, ace-king is like the top 10% of his range there. I mean, it was just like, that could have been like deuce-8 suited or something that he was squeezing me with. So I think, oh boy, ace-king, this is, I mean, when these guys get these kind of stacks, I'm just going to pot it and call if he bets. I mean, he could have a lot of draws. He just shoves on the flop, and I'm going to have some decent equity even if he has a hand like pocket tens. So, alright, so it worked out. But yeah, I mean, you gotta take a stand. You know, I mean, it just so happened that he happened to have a really good hand there and caught a really good flop. But you know what? There's a decent chance, considering he just called the ace-king out of position like that. You know, the flop could have come a little different. If the flop came queen-7 too, I also would have shoved, and then he would have folded. So, you know, there's just a few ways you can win it there. I wasn't really expecting him to call. I was expecting him to shove pre-flop or fold. So calling sort of threw me for a loop there. But it was one of those situations where I was going to risk. I believe we can go over the hand history real quick here. Okay, so pre-flop, I made it 4. He called, so there's 8, and he made it 17. So 4, 4, and 17 is 25. So I'm now risking 45, which is the amount I raised, to win the 25. So I'm not sure exactly what that amounts to math-wise, but my guess is it only needs to work about 2/3 of the time. How often is he going to have a hand that can withstand a 4-bet like that? My guess is, I mean, as loose as he was, maybe like 15 or 20%, especially deep like that. Like I pretty much told him he needs to play for his stack, and which is the main reason I did it, is because we were a little deeper. He needs to have a hand that is pretty much willing to play for his stack pre-flop. So now, for a guy who raises 32% pre-flop, he's probably 3-betting 25%. And now he needed basically like a top 3 or 4 hand in poker. You know, ace, king, aces, kings, or queens. And, you know, ace, king, and queens are dicey. I mean, 150 blinds deep, even in a squeeze situation, you're going to want a really big hand. So, you know, I put him in a position to have a hand to play for a stack, and I don't think he's going to have that 2/3 of the time. I think he's going to have it like maybe like, you know, quite a bit less than that. So I feel like it was plus EV right there. Since he called and then I got involved in a flop, I felt that shoving again was plus EV. So I made 2 plays I think were plus EV. It just didn't happen to work out. But anyway, hopefully I analyzed that one. And that made sense for you guys. But anyway, I'm just going to wrap it up here. This video is already approaching 55 minutes now, so I hope you guys enjoyed it, And I look forward to hearing from you guys in the forums.